The Shabbat finds us at the very end of, in some ways, a really powerful story that we don't just tell every year around this time, but it's really a story that we tell all the time as Jews. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the service, tonight actually begins the 5th of Iyar, which was the date on the Hebrew calendar when the state came into being. But we celebrate a few days earlier because of Shabbat. But there's an arc that goes through 3 days that are called by some Israeli educators the Israeli High Holy Days. Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. And typically when you don't have to move Yom HaAtzmaut, it actually is a 10-day arc, just like the days of Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. The first part of the story, Yom HaShoah, is about memory and loss. It's about really, in some ways, catastrophe. It begins in the ashes of Shoah, in the depths of loss and suffering. And tonight I want to share one way that this story, moving from Yom HaShoah to Yom HaAtzmaut, is embodied in the life of one of my family members. And so some of you joining from home, hopefully you'll be able to see this. Those of you here, sorry that I don't have a bigger copy of this. That was my fault. I forgot to ask Roz earlier to do this. But this is a picture of my family, and the man I'm going to talk about tonight is named Menashe, and that's him right there. And those are his 3 sisters and his mother and his baby brother. And Menashe was born in a small town in Hungary called Shator Ayeuihe in 1928. And he survived Shoah. Unfortunately, the rest of the family members in that photo did not. And actually next week, on Tuesday, I'm going to be flying to Munich because I've been invited to speak at a ceremony that's going to commemorate the 80th anniversary of Menashe's liberation from the concentration camp of Dachau. And I'll be joined by Menashe's 2 sons, Yehuda and Eli, who have become dear friends of mine, even though we're rather distant cousins. So that was part of Menashe's story. Born in 1928, and then in 1945, he survived Shoah, and he was liberated. And a few years later, he made Aliyah. He moved to Israel. And soon after he moved to Israel, he met Miriam. And again, I know I wish this were bigger, but you can see it later if you want. Miriam, her family was from Yemen, and it was at that time a really big deal for a Hungarian Jew to marry a Yemenite Jewess. And the 2 of them got married. Both of them served in the IDF. So just a few nights ago, we commemorated Yom HaZikaron, and we paid tribute to and gave honor to all of those soldiers and police officers and everyday people who gave their lives so that we could have a state of Israel. And Menashe is one of those. And his sons, Yehuda and Eli, and their spouses, and all of their kids, including several of his descendants who are currently serving in the IDF, are all part of that story of Yom HaZikaron. And then finally, just yesterday, but actually today in the Hebrew calendar, is Yom HaAtzmaut. And it's a day of great joy, a day of great celebration. It's a time when we take a breath after acknowledging the losses of Yom HaShoah, after acknowledging the sacrifice of Yom HaZikaron. We celebrate. But here, in such a powerful way, I think we really know what it is we're celebrating. It's not a gift that we take for granted. And so this is a journey that we celebrate here in our school. It's a journey that we celebrate in our lives. The last photo I'll show you is on my last visit with Menashe and Miriam. Unfortunately, Menashe passed away a few years ago, and Miriam 1 year later. And I had an opportunity to sit with them in their apartment in Ramat HaSharon and spend time together. And so when I think of his life and the arc of his life and the story embodied in one person, and this is the generation, by the way, the last generation that we will know, that could have experienced all of those things. Shoah, actually witnessing the birth of the state of Israel, serving in the IDF, celebrating what it is to build a state. It's a story that we can live, though, when we remember along with them. And it's a story that and this is the part I want fourth graders to really think about and their families, it's a story that we get to help write the next chapter of. Because how it's going to unfold, we don't know. There are no guarantees. And Jewish history teaches us that. There are no guarantees. All we can do is pray and act and make partnerships so that we have others out there who will work with us. There are lots of things we can do, but there are no guarantees. So let's remember the story being told. Let's remember those who lived it. And let's take our place in that story with pride, purpose, and hope. Am Yisrael Chai.